When you have a guest as regularly as we have Dr. Courtney Taylor, you know one of two things is the case. Either something really good is going on or something really bad is going on. I am excited to tell you that it is the former, not the latter. A lot of good happening at Accelerate Mississippi, where Courtney Taylor is the executive director. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Richard. How you doing?
Great. Stuck in a hotel room in Columbia, South Carolina for a little while longer, but I'm ready to come home to the Magnolia State.
Well, I hope you're going to eat some good food at least.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good so far. No complaints in that department. So, since we last visited, probably 3, maybe 4 months ago, into a new year, into this new legislative cycle. I guess we talked right after the legislature was going into session. Last couple of months, what's going on?
So everything. If you haven't heard, workforce is important. It's an interesting time with all the moving parts in Jackson right now. So we have recently held we have a SWIB board, State Workforce Investment Board meeting that happens twice a year, and they put out their recommendations. And so we've hired a couple of new people at the office and trying to really make sure we have the right people in the right place to tackle a lot of this work, because it is a really heavy lift. It doesn't happen fast enough. And I tell my team that, like, this is not a criticism. We got to move faster. And that's always going to be the case no matter how fast we move.
Yeah. With the number of projects that are being announced by the governor, in some cases, billion-dollar projects, multi-billion-dollar projects they're coming on. We know that your office plays a role in the planning, but then also on the backside, right, the implementation. And is it disconcerting for you? I mean, it's a great thing for the state of Mississippi that it feels like almost every week there's a new economic development project that is being announced. But is it hard for you to hear over and over, like, okay, now we've got to create another, X number of people to fill some of these jobs? 100%.
It is. I think at times, when we're running on the front end of some of these projects, it's like, oh, dear Lord. This one's going to be tough. It is exciting that there's so many new opportunities coming, and it's a reality check every time we have new jobs announced. We have expansions because every one of them needs skilled workers at all across the deal. You need accountants, you need HR people, you need electricians, welders, all the things. It is concerning at certain times, but it's also part of what we've been entrusted to handle is close those gaps, work with our partners, make sure that the workforce is here. And that looks different in every single region for every single company. And so sometimes it's a real heavy lift. Sometimes it's not. It's all these companies are also, the opportunity is that they're traditionally the shiny object, the new object. They get people excited. And so people are able to kind of look at the workforce maybe differently. So it's also an opportunity every time a new announcement comes along to try to drag a few more people into the pipeline and get them moving forward. But yeah, it's heavy lifts across the state.
Tell us a little bit about one of those meetings. I'll let you pick the company if there's one that's more interesting than others. But in this process where the state of Mississippi is recruiting a company to put a headquarters or a plant or a manufacturing facility in our state, and that conversation is happening, and the company's talking about its needs, and the state's talking about what it needs, and you're going through that process. Your role in that conversation, in that high-level meeting, what does that look like? What does it sound like?
So our team's responsibility is to answer all the workforce questions. Now, the reality today is these companies know more about our state than we do at times. The goal is that we make sure we know more than they do. But they have all the data. They know what they're looking for. They know about our pipeline. They know about our strengths. They know about our weaknesses. And so our job is to sit there and mitigate the gaps, whatever those may be, and to help them, as Bill Cork says, speed, risk, and money. It's where can we mitigate to help them go fast so they can make money? Where can we help them to provide the workforce? So in some cases, and I'll use amplify. because this project is Poppy, the one in North Mississippi and Marshall County. And,
Okay.
when they first started talking to us, it was all about we were going to need help recruiting. So, okay. So the legislature gave us some funding, and we hired a person that is her job, is to work with the company and help with recruiting. And they're the shiny object, and so they're working on that. So we're building out a lot of that now. But you get the recruiting questions. We sit there and we've had we're worried about the pipeline. There's not enough people. We had one company tell us, they operate in another state, and that state has 6,000 less electricians than they need. And to operate. And so they say, we know y'all have fewer electricians than you need in Mississippi, because that's the case everywhere. We're not special in that regard. So the ultimate question and the ultimate proposition has to be, what are we going to do about it? And that's where our talent solutions team comes in. They work up a proposal, whatever that may be. So maybe it's working with, local community college, local K-12, local private industry, whatever, to train and get that stuff moving.
Is that sell then at the local community college, or however you market that position? Let's just say you need 30 electricians. How do you sell that to young people, whether it's somebody who is currently in a community college and isn't really sure of the direction they're in? Maybe it's a high school senior that's still trying to decide whether or not they want to go to college, or they want to go to a community college, or they just want to jump into the workforce. Because I feel like there's a marketing aspect to that. The same but different. There's been a lot of talk about recruiting with the armed forces recently, and how the recruiting numbers were down. And some people are like, if you went back to the videos where you got people jumping out of helicopters with parachutes and they're wearing night vision stuff, and you make it look really cool, it might help. And here we are, Be All That You Can Be in the Army is back. Yep. The cool videos are back, and go figure, the recruiting numbers are up. So, a long way to say, what's the marketing pitch when you're trying to fill those spots?
So the marketing pitch is hard. I think by and large workforce, and I say this as a workforce developer, we're not marketing experts. And a lot of times we default to selling the organization, just like the Army. That example is the perfect example, where we talk about the organization, and nobody cares about the organization at the end of the day. They care about what they're going to do. And so I think we've still got a lot of maturing to do in that respect across the state, is how we talk to people, not just kids. I mean, you've got adults. If you're asking an adult and you're saying, hey, you need to quit your full-time job or cut back your hours to come into this training program because it's going to be better for you, what does that mean? What are they going to be doing every day? And for almost all of them, the value proposition is, how much money am I going to make? And that's what people care about. They also care about the difference that they're going to make and all that stuff. But
what's the answer to that question?
How much money you're going to make?
Question, hey, how much money am I going to make? If somebody is considering, hey, I'm going to go into this field as an electrician and I'm going to be working on the commercial side of things.
60,000 plus. So
as a starting point.
Starting point, you're going to be more around $20 an hour, and then you'll go up from there pretty quickly, depending. Which
equates to $40,000 a year plus overtime.
Yep, that's entry level starting point. I mean, that's with no skills, no nothing. It's different around the state, so that's another important fact that we have to pay attention to. In Jackson, Tupelo, what you got?
I think I've said this to you before, but I had a conversation with a general contractor not too long ago who was talking about, what he pays people and base salary. He said, yeah, I mean, that may be your base salary. Yep. He said, but if I've got a tradesman that is only willing to work 40 hours a week, then I'm looking for a different one. I may not have another one, but there are as many hours and as much opportunity to make money as fast as you want to as there are hours in the day.
Well, and I think culturally we've sold in some cases to kids that money is a bad thing, and it's not. And so we have that. We have the reality that we got to get them working earlier. We're working with our partners right now to push as many kids as we can in the 16 to 19-year-old range to get them working. Because they've got to learn how to work. They've got to learn, unfortunately, how to pay taxes. You've got things that need to hit you while you're young before you get off into the older days, or into the older ages. But it's at the end of the day, when we look at all of this stuff, it's pretty simple. People do want to make money to survive, and so we are working really hard to make sure they know they can do that. And I think our value proposition has to continue to mature and get better as we talk to kids.
People's interests are unique. We've talked a lot about jobs in kind of what we describe as the trades, right? Electricians and plumbers. What about people who are looking for more of a white-collar job, that are thinking the computer industry? We know when we hear that there are opportunities that are available. We'll talk with Courtney Taylor about that on the other side of this timeout. She's the executive director with Accelerate Mississippi. What about coding? What about computer science? Are those opportunities available with some of these economic development projects in the state of Mississippi? You can join us, C Spire text line 601-879-4395. We're back right after this. Good morning to you. This is Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Dr. Courtney Taylor is my guest. She is the executive director at Accelerate Mississippi. We're talking about recruiting people into the workforce, job opportunities that were available. And, Courtney, the truth of the matter is not everybody wants to be an electrician. Not everybody wants to be a plumber. There are some people who think that computer science is the way to go. We've heard a lot about coding. There are massive developments in AI that are changing the coding game on a daily basis. What about that piece of the workforce in terms of computer science folks?
Yeah, so absolutely, computer science across the board, everything from the hardware technicians to the software technicians to the coders, like you said. The challenge with that industry is it traditionally exists inside other industries. So if you're anything to do with computer science, you could work in every industry that exists. You could work in Walmart, in a grocery store, things like that, still doing this role. So it's really hard to get our hands around. One thing that we're seeing a lot of, especially with the advent of AI and the infiltration, I guess maybe not the advent, but is that what the developers are saying is we need everyone to have some level of these skills. You do have the people who are going to, work with the machine learning and create the machine learning pieces, the algorithms and the intelligence, but everyone else, the large majority of us, actually just need to understand how to work with it. So we're working right now with MDA and Amazon and several other partners to add in these skills to the programs that we have available across the board. Everybody from accountants and doctors to electricians to coders, everybody's got to have the skills. So I think that's the challenge with that world. But those jobs are there. They're not as easy to see, and they traditionally take a little bit longer to get to. It's not something you're just going to go take an 8-week course and go to work in. But there are a lot of opportunities. They require really heavy math skills. So I think a lot of what we're doing in the math world is going to help as we move forward as a state. But anyway, there's a lot of jobs there. They pay really well, very well. You're inside if you like computers. That's kind of the game. But they have to have these high-end skills and some certifications that maybe they don't offer at the education institutions or they don't know how to get to. So there's still some problems to solve there.
Just last week, I went with my 6th grade son to a meeting with the guidance counselor to pick his schedule for 7th grade. And one of the classes that he's taking, or I think it's even required, is Cyber Foundations. I mean, it's very basic. So that's starting at the 7th grade level. Are you seeing that with high schools across the state of Mississippi, that there are more opportunities for exposure to computer science, coding, all of those pieces? Is that happening earlier, and is it required?
Yeah, the Cyber Foundations 1 and 2, those classes are required. They're considered career technical education, and it does expose kids to kind of a few of the skill sets that they may need as they move forward. It's really the exposure thing is really challenging. It's hard and it's expensive in every way. But yeah, we have Cyber Foundations. I think seventh graders take Cyber Foundations 1 and 8th graders take Cyber Foundations 2, something like that. The question is, what do they do after that? And that's one of the challenges in career technical education is it's seat limited. So there's only so many kids you can put into a program. So we still have work to do on getting the right interest, like your son in his 6th grade year, or 7th grade year. What is he interested in, and how do we engage with him deeply on that so that he can take a seat in a program if he wants one, regardless of what it is, even if it's to pre-medical to be a doctor or whatever. take that seat, and then the moment he decides it's not what he wants to do and thinks about something else, let's get him into another program.
Yeah, you've heard the phrase, everything that's old becomes new again. And when we were in high school, you had shop class.
Yep.
And then there were, I guess they were categorized VOTEC, I think now career technical education, the way you described it a second ago, but exposing high school students to auto mechanics or to, basics of construction and lots of different trades. Are programs like that having a resurgence?
So I think they are, and they have really over the last decade in our state and every other state. I think that the challenge remains with those programs is getting kids, the appropriate level of engagement and letting them move on when they decide it's not something they want to do, so that we can work with the kids who are. They're very expensive. So that's where the career technical education game has gotten really, really specific. And I think in some cases too specific. We had more of what the colleges would call a survey class, right? Like you did shop, and you got to learn a whole bunch of things with shop. And it's a little bit more specialized in a lot of cases now. So it's almost too specialized in some cases, and then it's not necessarily aligned with what comes next. And so that's where we're working to with our partners. I mean, this is all the curriculum people to try to drive that connection deeper, so that what you do in high school can lead into something else, and that you understand what that is.
That's interesting. I mean, it's certainly different, but it's not entirely different than a conversation that goes along with youth sports, right? I mean, there was a time where kids were exposed to a bunch of different sports, and they played lots of different sports, football and basketball and baseball and soccer and golf and tennis and all those things. And now it's like, if you want to be good at one, unless you're just this exceptional athlete, then, when you're 8 years old or 9 years old, you kind of lock into a single sport. So it seems like more like kind of diversity of education is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think the difference with youth sports, I played college volleyball, so was into sports when I was younger. But I think the big difference with sports is that people typically understand what the end goal is. And that's where I think the career technical education game is so hard, is a lot of times the participants don't really understand. Humans are challenging in every way, and so we're the only species that will do less than necessary to survive, right? And so they'll kick along in something and then wake up one day and say, "Oh crap, what am I going to do?" So that's the challenge. Sports for a lot of people, have a very specific, I'm going to play this sport, I'm going to get a scholarship to go to college, I'm going to play in college, and then I'm either going to try to play outside of college or I'm not. And that, I think, would be a really cool, simple equation at the career technical education level, community colleges or high schools, to say, if you do this, then this could happen. It's your choice, but here's the job and here's what it pays. And I think there's still a lot of vagueness in what the job pays. And some of that is on private industry because they don't do enough to communicate their wages. And some of that is on the sensationalism at the education levels. Oh, you're going to make $150,000 a year, maybe. But probably not for most. And if you're going to make that much money, you're probably going to work in a really hard environment, and you're probably going to own your own business. And we don't talk about the fact that you can own your own business in these things enough.
Visiting with Courtney Taylor, just a couple of minutes left. Recruiting. I mean, you talk about recruiting people into these programs, workforce development. In some cases, it is workforce advancement, where you're in a job, but you've got a chance to move into perhaps a better job. What about beyond the borders of the state of Mississippi? We are a smaller state, population right around 3 million. Are there efforts to recruit people outside of Mississippi into the state of Mississippi?
There are. Those are, you got a couple at MDA. MDA is doing some work on that, on bringing Mississippians home. And then our private industry is doing a lot of that. So especially on our border industries, so everything on the coast, up the different walls of the state, they're doing that. And I think it's easier to get people who are from here to come back here and so that work has to happen, but the wages have to be there. And one of the things that we see occasionally is that companies want to pay their people less. Cost of living is cheaper here, obviously, than in a lot of states. But that doesn't mean people will take a pay cut to come here. So there's some realities there that we have to work through.
I'm curious. There was something that President Trump said last night in his address to Congress that kind of got my antenna up, and I'm wondering if you may or may not have watched that. But when he referenced shipbuilding, and we're going to try and return to the United States to a great shipbuilding country, I immediately thought about the coast and some of the infrastructure that is already in place there, some of the companies that are already in place there. Did you have a moment where you're like, ooh, we've got a new set of things that we may have to recruit to and get people ready for? We've
been working on this as an office since 22. We've got a federal grant. We call it Mississippi Ships. But we've got a federal grant. We're working with our shipbuilding and submarine. Submarine is kind of the big push because they've got a submarine effort going on in Alabama. But that's going to pull from the same workforce. And so we've been working with Bollinger and Ingalls and our supplier company, Seaman Composites. We met with them a couple weeks ago. There's just a bunch of them down there that are doing really good things very quietly. So you have the big bear, that is Ingalls, and they do great work. They hire a ton of people, and you have some of your smaller ones. But it is something that we are attacking with a sense of urgency with all of our partners across the board.
Courtney Taylor, Executive Director at Accelerate Mississippi. Never a shortage of things to talk about. We always appreciate your time and look forward to visiting with you again soon.
Good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mornings with Richard Cross rolls on. Thanks to Courtney for joining us in studio this morning. We will wrap up the 7 o'clock hour with you next.